fellas? Here we're back at Pokemon Masters. We're here at Nessa and Drednaw, F out of 5 6-star EX. I know this is seemingly random, but Nessa actually released 3 years ago. Not today, but this month, right? She released back in May of 2021 alongside B and some other characters, I think. I don't actually remember. But either way, so it's been 3 years since Nessa's release, and she is still, if you did not know, one of the best nukers in the game. She has, I think, like the 10th best nuke, if not a little bit better than that. I'm kind of making up numbers as I go, but it's mostly by the fact that she's got obviously a ton of multipliers. I think that's kind of obvious, right? She's got the innate multiplier of Restrain for a free 100% multiplier there. She's got Shower Power for a 50% Sync Nuke multiplier, Cakewalk for 100%, and then Relentless as well for another 100%, giving her 350% in total multipliers on top of her 359 attack stat. Could be a little bit higher with the level 150 and some other stuff as well. So she does also have pretty good DPS options with Restrain Power Up 5, which powers up her attacks when the enemy is restrained, as well as having, I think, Raging Rain here for a 30% DPS multiplier, and then Hunter's Instinct as well if you'd pick it up for another 30% DPS multiplier. So the big thing with Nessa that does not make her as cracked as you would initially think is more so that her multipliers are pretty hard to activate. All of them, rather. She wants Rain, Restrain, Defense debuffs, and Speed debuffs. All of which, besides Rain, she can do by herself. But you can only do them, so quickly, right? So, for one, debuffing Speed is annoying because you have to go for Rock Tomb, which Rock Tomb sucks, so you'd rather have an ally to debuff Speed, and there's not too many great partners for her that can debuff Speed. You do have Doja Gloria. Doja Gloria does help out a ton with her multipliers, and then of course you can bring like New Champion Caleb or Signature Chris as a support for Rain, but do note that those Rain setters are more special oriented than physical oriented, so there is a little bit of synergy lacking there between that. But of course, if you want the full activation of her multipliers plus the 50% DPS buff in Rain, then there you go. Caleb's also pretty good support because he's able to both both help out with her water and dark damage with the Razor Shell power up and the Jaw Lock power up. She does have some good DPS for water and dark here, and we're gonna be looking at her again in a few different situations. So I guess happy 3rd anniversary to Nessa's release. Let's go ahead and take a look at what she can do in the modern meta, I guess, which is still very good for sure. Alright, so our first battle here with Nessa is a basic on-type battle where we are trying to maximize most of her multipliers. So obviously, again, the biggest problem with Nessa to me is that she has way too many multipliers to try to activate, which really limits team composition, or of course you have to sacrifice actual damage, right? So whichever you choose to do, fair enough, I suppose, but that's probably the biggest reason why you just don't really see too many people talk about Nessa, is because obviously you're not really, while she can look amazing under her best scenario, it is pretty unrealistic to get that scenario and, not be like hindering your team or something else to that extent. Either way, we brought Logelisa here to debuff Speed. We obviously have no defense debuff, so we have no Relentless activation. So this is the Restrained Innate Multiplier, Cakewalk, and Shower Power, rather, which is definitely very good damage. Yeah, 100%, right? First Sync, no support X, something like that, being able to do that much damage is definitely pretty impressive, I would say. And again, no defensive debuff, sadly enough, but hey, whatever. That's just kind of how, I guess, things have come to be expected, so whatever. Still, her damage is fine. Razor Shell does enough damage just to be satisfactory, I would say, for the most part. Like, you're not really expecting much out of it, but it does definitely do the job, taking out sides and whatnot. Definitely the biggest problem with Nessa, well, other than her multipliers, is like probably a lack of AoE damage by any extent, right? Like, she has no AoE sync move. Maybe Strike Axel could fix that. She has no AoE damaging option. The closest thing that she has to AoE is Ripple Effect. That's it, which is not really all that impressive to think about, realistically speaking, but still, that's fine. Whatever. That's probably the biggest caveat to Nessa, other than her multipliers, but other than that, not really big issue, honestly. She's still a very great water option, combined here with May and Elisa, two quite free to play existing characters, I guess, triple general pool technically. And it ended up working out just fine, right? Again, Nessa is still very impressive in terms of her overall nuking damage, and DPS is still quite solid as well. Here we are for an off-type battle, kind of, anyway. I feel like Argenta being super effective here actually kind of did make a difference. At least in the strategy that I was doing. But either way, it doesn't really matter too much. We're able to use Argenta here and Steven to both supply Nessa with physical moves next to make sure that she actually does DPS damage, right? But also Steven is an amazing partner for Nessa in terms of multiplier activation, being able to do both defense and speed with his buddy move, and then of course, you know, you can apply rebuff if you're super effective, or you can apply physical moves next, whatever it may be, right? So Steven's not just here to be, you know, the best physical supportive tech in the game, but more so here for the defense and speed debuffs, which is going to be activating Nessa's Relentless and Cakewalk, on top of having Jaw Lock, right, for the Restrain, which is going to give you some good NUKE multipliers there as well. The only thing that we're missing on the setup is Rain and, by extension, Shower Power in the grid. So we are missing out on quite a lot of damage from that, but I do want to kind of showcase that Nessa does not really require much in terms of, you know, multiplier activation in order to actually still be quite oppressive, just due to the sheer amount, I guess, of multipliers that she actually has available to her. It's pretty impressive, I would say, for the most part. So obviously, Steven, amazing for applying physical moves next. Plus 4 physical moves next, 5,000 damage on the Razor Shell. I mean, that's pretty much to be expected for the most part, right? We did the Metal Claw as well there with Argenta. It would have been better to go for Argenta's max move sooner rather than later, but I just don't think I ever did. I don't know why I didn't. I just didn't. Yeah. Rock Slide there. This actually ended up being pretty funny because Steven's Rock Slide ended up being pretty damn crazy in terms of damage. Razor Shell does good damage, but then Tackle ends up finishing it off. So I don't know. I guess that's what happens when enemy has -6 defense. I don't know. I don't know why Steven did that much damage with fucking Tackle of all things. He does have a pretty respectable offensive stat though, so I can't give him that. Cool though, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Nessa, of course, you know, pretty impressive in that setup as well. Of course, those are quite limited in terms of the partners, Argenta and Steven both being, you know, again, limited characters. It's not really the biggest thing in the world though. You can obviously try and make some caveats and whatnot and replace replace these partners with other partners, right? Just pretty much any defensive, reliable defensive debuffer. Another secondary DPS would have probably been better as well, because do note, there's no DPS on this team besides Nessa, right? So having a secondary DPS would definitely help out a lot. And we'll go ahead and look at that, I guess. And here we are to look at Nessa with Signature Chris and Dojo Gloria. Dojo Gloria is definitely one of the best partners for Nessa in terms of multiplier activation, because Dojo Gloria, at least at 3 out of 5, is able to debuff defense and speed. Mine's only 1 out of 5, so it's only defense, but you can pick up Tripping Strike on Dojo Gloria at 3 out of 5, which would be activating Nessa's Cakewalk and her Relentless multipliers, which would have been really, really strong for sure. It's just that in this instance, I ended up mostly sacrificing the Cakewalk for the rain, like with Shower Power and Raging Rain and all that stuff instead, which I just thought was a little bit better. I did go for Rock Tomb, but that was mostly out of lack of gauge for the most part. Nessa is a little bit slow, so you do also have to kind of deal with gauge issues, but I think that's only really occasional. At least Gloria here is pretty sufficient in terms of gauge management, though, so that's good, obviously. This probably would have been a better setup to put with New Champion Caleb, because New Champion Caleb can max out the offensive stats of Nessa with his trainer move. Sadly, the biggest thing with him is that he's only able to apply physical moves next when applying Dark Zone, which is good if you're trying to do Jaw Lock damage, which we'll look at here in a bit. But if you're trying to go for, you know, rain damage, or water damage rather, you're going to want the rain, which is going to apply special moves next. So there are, you know, problems to having to deal with using New Champion Caleb as a support. So really, I don't think there's too much of a difference between using him and Chris. The only difference is really that Caleb can get Nessa's attack to +6, whereas Chris cannot. But you also sacrifice team longevity when using Caleb over Chris, so there's caveats to both, right? Overall, I think Chris's stuff is better, honestly. Or the stuff that she applies is better, like the potions and whatnot, for the most part. At least helping out team survivability, so yeah. Either way, doesn't really matter too much. Able to KO the side there with that max move. Wish I could have queued up Surging Strikes there, but I mean, this is a pretty effective utilization of Nessa's team setups, I guess. Like, Dojo Glory is an amazing partner for Nessa. Having a rain support is also, an amazing thing as well. I do think that water type teams could use one final solid rain support, or maybe rebuffer or something that can help out physical teams more so than special, because both massive rain supporting characters, rain supports rather, just specifically, are special oriented when it comes to actually buffing those water characters. So if we can have one that caters more to like Nessa, Dojo Gloria, Chris, or these other physical water attackers, then that would be really amazing. Not that water really needs the help, but that is probably the one thing that is really kind of holding back Nessa outside of her multiplier activation stuff. And to finish off here, we have ourselves on-type dark damage. Yeah, I could have definitely done something with like Akari, Neo Champion, Caitlyn, whatever, trying to maximize jaw lock damage as much as I possibly could. Definitely fair to try, right? But I just felt that it was better to go for a more free-to-play oriented setup, because this is something that I can personally attest to. Having a dark character can sometimes be, at the very least, tough. Because back when I started playing this game, I could not pull Sydney. I could not pull the Master Royale. My only Dark-type options were Nessa and BP Karen. So this one truly speaks from the heart in terms of what I'm dealing with, or what I used to have to deal with in order to actually be able to clear Dark Week stages. Of course, I had Karen too, but this was prior to both her EX and her power boost, so that was just out of the question for the most part. And again, could not pull the Master Royale or Sydney. So this is a very solid free-to-play alternative to an actual dark sync pair, right? Being able to use Nessa's Jaw Lock is very effective. If you can somehow, build your team to have like Raging Rain or something, it may end up being a little bit more worthwhile than using Karen, because while Karen's DPS is helpful, you do also have to maintain her health quite a bit, so I guess keep that in mind. But this is literally just having Jaw Locks in a Restrained Power-Up multiplier from Nessa's base kit, and having, I think, a 20% multiplier in the grid. That's it. That's all that I pretty much have with Nessa here for her Jaw Lock damage, and of course the EX, right? But, I don't really factor that in too much. Point being that there's not much needed in terms of multiplier activation for Nessa to look pretty impressive in the dark setup, I guess, when on type, right? Of course, you could also pair her up if you have it with the Egg Umbreon, if you think that that would be better than bringing in BP Karen or something. There are obviously alternatives, which if I had more time or whatever, I would probably, make that minor difference in putting in, Egg Umbreon instead of Karen here, and then trying to set up again, putting that as a separate bit. If you're interested in some setups, some alternate setups for some of these sync pairs, I guess, let me know down in the comments below. Maybe I'll put them into shorts or something. Let me know what maybe team compositions you want to see. I'll put it up as a short, whatever, if you're interested. But anyway, Nessa does have good dark damage, and that grid having as little investment as it does shows that you can, for one, do low investment in the grid if you are struggling with sync orbs or something, and of course means that you could just try to go for something else in the grid other than, the 9 energy I just opted to not use. Maybe Gauge Refresh or whatever it may be. But anyway, that's pretty much the overall showcase for Nessa here at 5 out of 5 6-star EX. I think that there is a pretty big difference between Nessa without the EX and Nessa with the EX, even when it comes to doing like Jaw Lock damage. The stats really do help quite a bit, I would say, and of course the support EX from Hop being free now is a big help there as well. So if you don't have Nessa invested, that's fair enough. But, of course, investment can definitely help if you want a good water nuker, or if you want yourself a good water and dark DPS damage dealer. That's redundant, but yeah, whatever. I think Nessa is definitely one of the more slept on. I don't know if I would say slept on, honestly, because, there's not much reason to talk about her when a lot of the stuff that she is about is mostly hypothetical, because, like, her full nuke activation is kind of difficult to activate with, all the multipliers, Cakewalk, Restrain, Rain, Relentless, all of that stuff. So annoying to activate, but if you can get all of it activated, she can look extremely impressive. She does have pretty solid damage options in terms of Razor Sail and Jaw Lock as well, so keep all that in mind when discussing Nessa or, trying to use her as well. She is still very good for being released 3 years later. So yeah, that's my thoughts. Let me know what you think about Nessa down in the comments below. And yeah, I'll see you all later. I hope you all enjoyed.